Welcome to Monologues by Hassie, where I'm going to be dropping unsolicited brain dumps from the depths of my grey matter. I'll talk about life, money, society, and self-development, plus whatever else lies up there, whilst hopefully not getting cancelled in the process. A few months ago, I was recommended to read the book called Die with Zero by Bill Perkins. And it was a rather interesting book in that there were many points in that book that I, for the most part, agreed with from the experiences that I've had in my own life, from conversations I've had with other people. And it's a book that is geared towards people who typically have disposable income. And the whole concept is, how can you get to the end of your life and have $0 in your bank account? And it's not about being irresponsible, and it's not about necessarily about being selfish either, but it's simply about how can you maximize your life experiences and the good that you can do in the world whilst you are still alive, rather than leaving a very large sum in your inheritance and not particularly enjoying that money yourself and not experiencing the joy of giving that money to other people whilst you are still alive. So it is an interesting book in the sense that it's probably not for everyone. If you don't actually have a lot of money, then your focus should be on growing your income. But I still think that no matter where you are, there are certain things in that book, and especially if you are somebody who doesn't have a lot of disposable income, then you're probably going to read this book and it's going to sound very ridiculous. I mean, there were certain sections of it where I'm like, wow, this guy flew in artists and musicians for his 40th, 50th birthday, so there's a particular level of wealth that he's achieved where he can afford to do that, and I'm definitely not there, but I'm far from it. But there are many concepts that I think are incredibly valuable, and I'm glad that I'm reading this book at 29 years old, on the cusp of 30, and for me, it has helped me justify a few decisions that I'm going to make later in the year that I hadn't made at the start of this year, purely because it's helped me reframe how I see my relationship with the money I'm spending and the age I'm at. So with the book, it's essentially talking about not just how can you invest your money. I mean, it's important that we invest our money. It's important that we have financial buffers. I'm a big proponent of personal finance. You can listen to my episodes on the FIRE movement and passive investing, and I bring these concepts up in a few of the episodes that I've done in the past. And these are incredibly important things. But I think as a kid, and in this book it references one of Aesop's fables, the ant and the grasshopper. Now that's something that I heard when I was a child as well, and it's the story of the ant who in summer is busy working, going to work, hustling away, saving food for the winter, and there is a grasshopper who's just chilling about and says, I'll do it later, I don't need to do this now. And the grasshopper laughs at the ant for the entire summer as the ant goes and works. And when the winter comes, the ant has food and the grasshopper starves. So that is the premise that I think many people are raised by. And if I look at myself, if I look at the last 4 years of my life, prior to deciding to leave my job and travel the world and work on my own projects, is that I very much was the person who was pushing my foot down on the accelerator and saving money. I was investing money, which is a great decision. I highly recommend investing a portion of your income if you can, because it is going to give you optionality down the track. But I was definitely somebody who didn't really enjoy things. I was always delaying gratification. And up until I took this particular journey, I was very much a overworked employee who is always trying to improve, always trying to gain a new skill set so I can save more and have a better future. And it was this constant, relentless drive to improve myself, which is something I still do. Let me put that out there. I'm always improving myself, but I was in a phase of accumulation. I was much like the ant, saving and squirreling away for the winter, in the sense that I was saving money, I was investing my money, I was investing my money in my own skills so I could increase my earning potential. And this was my pure focus. And the important thing that this book really highlights is that a lot of people's goals, you really need to question them in terms of what impact they are going to have. And let me give you an example of this. Now, this is an example that I first heard from my therapist many years ago, back when I was going to therapy. And he basically says he sees many of his clients who spent, and these are older clients, these are people in their 60s, 70s, 80s, who spent majority of their lives with the idea that I want to pass something on to my children. I want to pass my children some wealth. I maybe want to buy them a house, or maybe I want to save a lot of money and invest it and pass that money down to them. And so they spend majority of their working life whilst their children are young, focused on earning money for this fictitious future where they pass away and they can give this money to their children. Now, when you look at the statistics of when people die, let's say in the Western world, a person dies at 80 years old. Then when their children inherit that money that parent saved, that child is probably going to be in their 50s or 60s. Now, at that point, that child no longer needs that money as much as they would have earlier in their life. Sure, it's going to be a great bonus, but they've already done the hard things. They've already purchased their first property. They've probably already started their families. Their children are probably in their 20s. So by the time that child inherits the money that parent so slavishly worked away for, the child is already grown up. The child is already an old person in their own right. And maybe that child would have been better off served by being given a gift, a much smaller gift, right, that hadn't had the time to compound when they were in their mid to late 20s. That could have been much more helpful. Maybe when they get married, it's a gift to help them purchase their first house or for their first child. And so the concept of this book is, and at that time as well, the parent would have also derived more joy from giving that gift because they were still alive. So when you give the gift when you're alive, you create a positive memory from it. And even though it's much smaller than it could have been had you invested it another 40 years until you died, it is going to have a much bigger impact on that child because you are helping them in a greater time of need when they are more likely to be struggling to establish themselves and gain a foothold in society. And it would have provided you a certain happiness dividend. And this is one of the things that I really liked in this book, was it talks about the fact that by investing in experiences, you compound returns over time. And this is both for things like giving, like in the example I said, where you decide to give money while you're alive to either your children or a cause you care about. You also reap the benefits of seeing that come into fruition, rather than simply putting it in your will as a gift. Now, the counterpoint to that is the parent who slaved away, and my therapist was talking about, he sees a lot of people who, realistically, even if they didn't give money to their children, if they simply said, rather than trying to make so much money so that our children can be secure when we pass away, had those parents simply spent more time with their children, maybe gone on a holiday, maybe gone to the local park, maybe just done things on a regular basis with their children, they would have formed a greater relationship, passed on more life skills, and that might have actually had a better outcome. So this is one of those conversations that I've had in my past regarding the way we think about money and the way we think about work, and are the goals that we're striving for really the best way to achieve those goals? So if your goal is to help your children, should you really be trying to amass so much money to leave them in your will when you die at 80 years old? Chances are that's probably not actually the best way to help your children. You could simply invest more time with them today, and it doesn't have to be a monetary thing. But of course there is opportunity cost, and that might mean you do work less hard. So it was an interesting book in that it spoke about experiences like that, and I think that definitely resonated with some of the things that some of the conversations that I've had. And even when I look at my own immediate family and my own extended family, I think the mindset that we are saving for a really, really rainy day has definitely prevailed. I am starting to see that shift now that my parents and my uncles and aunties are older. They are starting to enjoy their lives a bit more, and I'm happy for that. I'm glad they're doing it, but they're definitely doing it, I think, in a way that the book tells you not to. So the book is all about, and it's great if you're a young person reading Die with Zero, but I think you can read Die with Zero no matter how old you are. It's great in the sense that it tells you should be maximizing your experiences now. Like, my parents are only really beginning to travel now in their late kind of 50s and 60s, but that is also the time where your body is going to be significantly older. You're going to have less energy, and they're still traveling. But I know as a 29-year-old, when I'm traveling now, it's much easier for me. But I can already tell that compared to when I was 21, my body is, it's not as energetic as it was before. Whilst I'm in better shape than I've probably been before, if I look at things like my knee and my ability to recover from injuries when I get them, I'm definitely not as able to bounce back as I was when I was 10 years younger. So I know this is only going to become more drastic as I age. And I've also realized now from the travels I did when I was 21 and when I was younger, and the year that I lived in Melbourne, and these experiences that I had, there is a memory dividend that I get, because these are things that I can talk to people about. And often what you find when you have conversations with people is the joy that they get is based off things they've done. And remember, this doesn't necessarily have to involve spending money, but you should really be investing in experiences. And this is what the book is all about. Now, I would like to add a note, and this is more of a personal thing, that I think for most people you shouldn't take this to an extreme. So in the story of the ant and the grasshopper, the ant is one extreme, the person who hustles and saves and doesn't really enjoy anything and waits till the winter. And then you have the grasshopper, who is basically the equivalent of a trust fund baby who is just constantly enjoying their life and does no work. And I think really it's about being balanced. There are times when you are going to be the ant and there are times when you are going to be the grasshopper. But I think the important thing is, if you're somebody like me who can seemingly go for years on end grinding and trying to get to the next rung in my career or the next rung in the corporate ladder or buy that next asset, then it's important to remind yourself to be the grasshopper from time to time. And this book was very important in the sense that it actually did change the way that I was feeling about my own decision to leave my job. I think when I got to the 3 to 4 month mark, and this is roughly around the same time this book was recommended to me, I was feeling like, have I been too much of a grasshopper? And this is despite me doing work, but because I'm doing work in a non-traditional sense, in an abstract sense, in a way that doesn't yield immediate monetary rewards, there were times where I definitely felt like the grasshopper. And what I realized is I'm actually creating experiences that I'm going to benefit from even when I'm too old to physically travel. I might get to 70 years old and no longer have the capacity or the will to jump in a plane and fly across the world. But for the time being, I can create those memories, and when I'm at that age, I can enjoy the fact that I've been able to live this very rich life. So I realized that right now I am actually creating an investment in something that I can enjoy, and this is something I've definitely experienced based on the holidays I've been on in the past and simply the fun things I've done back at home, be it hanging out with friends. And what I realized is I'm in New York at the moment, and I'm catching up with a friend who we were like chalk and cheese in high school, and we were reminiscing on some of those high school moments, some of the dumb things we did in high school. And a lot of people do this when they meet their old friends. They talk about the experiences they've had in the past. And you realize from these moments, it's because we created these positive memories in the past that we still gain dopamine. We still achieve pleasure. We still gain pleasure from speaking about these things, even though they happened 10, 15 years ago. And with everything we do now, it's very much the same. So my kind of conclusion from reading Die with Zero, at least for this year, is yes, I don't want to be a complete grasshopper. I don't want to be completely wasteful. But when I come back to Australia, I'm actually going to take off again, and I'm going to do another trip around Asia before coming back in November. So my decision is I'm going to go home, say hi to my family, spend time with my dog, create some great memories for a month, enjoy my 30th birthday, and then I'm going to go away for 2 months at least so I can come back again, create some memories. I've got a few friends getting married in November, and then I'm going to go into the ant mode. And this was something where I would have felt very iffy about this prior to reading this book. But I think having had a chance to read on this book, to reflect on my own experiences and the conversations I've had, I definitely realized that it is absolutely worth spending a bit of money today and making an investment in some of the memories that can be done. Now, there's one very simple story that happened recently, and it was very influenced by the fact that I've been able to process this information and process some of the major points in Die with Zero by Bill Perkins. And when I arrived in Canada, I was staying with some family, and as soon as I arrived, I found out that my cousin's high school graduation was the day after I was scheduled to leave Canada. So I rescheduled my train, and it cost me about $50 to change my train to the next day so I could attend my youngest cousin's high school graduation. He happens to be the youngest cousin on my mother's side, and he's turning 18 this year, and these are people that, because they live in Canada on the other side of the world from me, I don't get to see them very often. And so some people would have said, and maybe an older version of me would have said, oh, I'm really sorry, I'm going to miss your high school graduation. I would have given him a gift the night before and then left to New York. But I decided to take the time and pay a little bit of money to change my train to the next day so I could attend his graduation. And I'm extremely glad I did, because I got to scream his name really loudly when his name was announced. He wanted me to embarrass him a little bit and scream some things during the graduation ceremony, so people knew that he had an audience with him. And I gave him a David Goggins Go Hard or Stay Strong or whatever it's meant to be. And we had a really great time. We met up with a few other cousins cousins of theirs, and we all went and ate and watched movies, and it was really fun being able to celebrate my cousin's high school graduation. And I'm glad that I made that investment, even though it was only $50 out of my trip and an extra day, to actually attend that. And I think that is the prime example of why I want to invest in experiences, because this is not just a memory for me getting to see my youngest cousin graduate high school, but it's also an experience for him that he got to have his older cousin from Australia come to his high school graduation. And when they look at those videos of his name being announced on stage, they're going to hear me screaming really, really loudly. And this is just something small, a story from my life, to emphasize that what you do doesn't inherently need to be expensive. Like, of course, me being in Canada is a very expensive thing. I've literally had to cross the world to get here. But the decision to delay my train and pay the cancellation fees and reschedule was 100% worth it, because I know the memories I got out of that are going to be incredible, and the money can be earned. The money is fictitious. Our central banks are printing money all the time, and I know I'm somebody who can figure out how to increase my way to provide value to the world and earn more money down the track. So I'm not worried about that. But I know that experience of him turning 18 is never going to come back again, that high school graduation. So I'm very glad that I was able to experience that, and I got to spend some really good time with my cousins and my family up here in Canada. And these are one of the things where I think no matter where you are, no matter how expensive it is, even if it means going to the park today or spending a Sunday or going for a hike, invest in the experiences now, because these are going to be the memories that you have when you are older. So those are some of my big takeaways from Die with Zero. It is a really good book. I think it is definitely geared towards people who are incredibly high net worth individuals. We're talking multi-millionaires, billionaires, the type of people who are very likely to kind of just hoard a lot of money and die and leave these huge inheritances. But I think there is some applicability to those of us who have some disposable income, especially if you're from the Western world. If you're from the Western world, we're generally quite fortunate that majority of our society, maybe if I were to, off the top of my head, at least 50% of our society has some form of disposable income, which is very uncommon when you look at other societies around the world. So if you are listening to this and you do have disposable income and maybe you've been investing, I'm not telling you to sell out of your investments, because I sure as hell won't be. Remember, it is not about going to an extreme, it is about picking a happy middle path. But I think that a book like Die with Zero is really good to challenge the way you think, especially if you're somebody like myself and many of the people I know who have been very much in the type of people to always delay gratification and to keep pushing good things into the future. So maybe it's time to go to the park, maybe it's time to take that long weekend, maybe it's time to go on that holiday or do that trip, or climb that mountain that you've really wanted to. And maybe, just maybe, you die with zero. So to all of you listening to this today, I will end this episode here, and I wish you great success on all your endeavors. You've just made it through another episode of Monologues by Hassie. It brings me great pleasure to know that you made it to the end. To listen to more episodes, subscribe on your favorite podcast app or visit monologuesbyhassie.com. Thanks for swinging by.